Glad you made it simple.
I would like to call the July 9th, 2025 City Council regular meeting to order. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Carey,
Present.
Chilson,
Present.
Hutchings. Here. Nelson,
Present.
Parker,
Yes, I'm here.
Wackler. Not here yet. You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mayor, I move the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda as presented before us.
May I have a second, please?
I will second.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
June 25, 2025 City Council meeting minutes. Ordinance 2025-020, amending Soldotna Municipal Code Titles 2, 9, 13, and 17 regarding quasi-judicial appeal procedures. Sponsored by the city manager. The public hearing will be on July 23rd. Ordinance 2025-021, amending Soldotna Municipal Code Section 2.28170. Reimbursable expenses, sponsored by the city manager. Public hearing on July 23rd, 2025. Ordinance 2025-022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $5,000 in the general fund to appropriate funds to influence the outcome of an election, sponsored by the city manager. Public hearing on July 23rd, 2025. Resolution that's not on consent. Make sure that's everything. Oh, yes, it is. Thought you were going to read that one. Resolution 2025-028, commending the Alaska Municipal League on its 75th anniversary and recognizing the impact of its Strong at 75 campaign to celebrate the strength and local government, sponsored by Vice Mayor Parker. That is your consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? Anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on any item that was on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. Moving on to, are there any objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we will have unanimous consent on the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Next item is public comments and presentations. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom and see if there's any hands raised there. And there are not any hands raised there. Next item on the agenda is Assembly and Legislative reports. Are there any representatives from the borough and or the state legislature that would like to address the council? And I see Mr. Cox there anxiously awaiting in the audience.
Where to start? There was a lot yesterday, especially for a summer meeting. First off, Tyson Cox Assembly seat for Soldotna. We had several things we went through yesterday, and I wanted to talk about several of them because some of them can directly affect Soldotna, but most of the ones will directly affect Soldotna residents, if not the city itself. Before I mention that, I will mention that There will be another seat open. There will be 5 seats being open for the assembly this year because Mr. Baisden did announce yesterday that he is going to resign from the assembly. So the K Beach seat will also be available. So it will be, as far as I know, well, 4 for sure. I guess Nikiski isn't for sure, but I do believe that one will be open as well. But my seat will be open, the Soldotna seat. The Brent Johnson seat will be open. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 Baisden, and the Sterling seat will be open again for election because that was appointed. So there's the very good potential that there will be 5 seats available on the assembly, which will be interesting to see. Going down the list, we had, there was an ordinance that came forward from Assemblymember Johnson to raise the sales tax cap for inflation. I did have some questions on that, so I wanted to be very clear of what that was going to do. It would be going to a vote of the people, so it would go to the vote of the people, but the question that would be asked is, do we attach that to a CPI at the $500? So I asked, and it's in a fiscal note within that, the first year, if we did that the way that it reads, is it would not be very much. It would be $511 starting January 1. The next year, I can't remember the exact number, but it would be in the high 20s, I believe, 520 something if the CPI stays the same, and so on and so forth. It would be very minimal increases. I don't know, it was just being introduced, but why I'm mentioning it now is it's something to watch at our next meeting. The next item was ordinance 2025-15. That would levy a seasonal sales tax resulting in a net neutral change for residents. What that would be is a 2% tax for the winter months. That would be your quarter 4, quarter 1, quarter 2 and 3 would be at 4%. I did bring a resolution forward asking for a working group for that because I am not as confident as Mayor Machicki or Assemblymember Cooper that that will be net neutral for our residents. I don't know that because we have not been given enough information that shows that we will not incur more cost. And I think that's something we need to know if that's something we're to go forward with. That one would also have to go to the people because as much as we're saying that is not an increase in tax, it technically is an increase in tax, and it would have to go to vote of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And both of those will be taken up at our next meeting. Just for a note, we will take up out of order the resolution first to be able to decide if we want to then, because if the resolution goes forward, then most likely we would vote down the ordinance itself. So we did it out of order, and we made sure that will happen next meeting because the resolution was on here but got postponed to the August 5th meeting. The next one was increasing so Mr. Baisden brought this one forward. It was increasing the tax exemption, the general tax exemption from $50,000 to $75,000. One significant question that was asked yesterday was, would that be for everyone? Would that include seniors and the general population? And the reason that was asked is that was a big question when the 50,000 or when the 50,000 was put on, that when it went from 20,000 to 50,000, that was a big question of how would that go? And by process, the way that it's gone so far is 50,000 has been taken off of everyone. So a senior with full exemptions with the 150, 150, and 50 that everyone gets, a senior in this area would get $350,000 exemption. Currently, that would change to $375,000. So just to be clear, because that was a question that we had not a long, but a bit of discussion about. That one as well, all 3 of those would be on the ballot. Right now, we have the potential of having 5 items on the ballot. There are 2 initiatives that have been brought forward. They have not been finalized yet, but they're working on them. So as they get closer, we'll talk about them more, but there are 2 that are from the public coming forward, and it has to do with like dates for elections, that stuff. The other one that it doesn't actually have to do with maybe Soldotna area right now, but I would suggest keeping an eye on it, is establishing the Ninilchik Recreational Service Area upon voter approval. The reason I say it's something we should look at is because that is specifically to help keep the Ninilchik pool open. One of the things that was put in there is the mayor did put a lay down opinion in there, and his opinion had three options. One option is to do nothing. One option was to do as Ninilchik wants with their area to be there. The third option was to make it a much larger, which wasn't defined as if it was the entire peninsula or just surrounding areas larger. But that is something that could potentially come into Soldotna if that area is also included in that. I've also heard rumors that next year there's a good chance that we could be looking at all pools, possibly looking at this same kind of scenario. And again, that's just a rumor. That is not something that they are doing for sure, but there is potential to that. And so it's something just to be aware of. My big question is if we're going to make every area a large service area, then we need to also include Nikiski in that. And I question if that will be very appealing. But that, I think, is the last one we had on there for any of the items from yesterday. So we have a lot of stuff happening. Our next meeting, 8/5, will be in Homer. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions from the council? Go ahead, Ms. Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you for the update, and sounds like the voters will have a lot to vote on in October. The seasonal sales tax, since the borough tax is dedicated to education, will this help fund education at the full 30%, plus not take as much from the general fund for education?
I'll answer in what was said in our meeting, I guess is how I'll answer that. Is the fiscal note says it should produce about 4.5 more million in revenue. Currently, all sales tax goes towards education. Opinion-wise, that shouldn't change how much we fund education, because we have never fully funded out of a sales tax. It's always been partly funded through our mill rate. The goal of that would maybe be to reduce the mill rate because we're using more of a sales tax. But the mayor was asked if that would do the exact same thing that you asked, if that would get us to the full amount. So another fund to the cap type of idea. He said that is definitely not something that he was interested in. And so I don't know that, and I mean, to be truthful, that isn't a guarantee. It's going to depend on every assembly that comes forward. So would it give more incentive? Possibly. Is it something that is going to happen every year? I highly doubt. I don't know if that gives you a very good answer. I can answer it better if you have.
So I guess I'm trying to fully understand the rationale in making this switch.
I'm not sure, because I do know that, and it's in my resolution, and the mayor did say that he said it, is the mayor has said several times on record that we do not need any more money. So I have asked that question too, then why are we in such a rush to put this forward this year? And that's one of the reasons I put that resolution forward, is why do we need to go so quickly on this? I'm not sure. He had said that, and then later in the meeting, I did ask Ms. Cooper if it was vital that we do it this year, and she said it was not. So I'm not quite sure of the need. I don't know. I'm thinking then that because it does say in the ordinance, it does have a statement that says this. Right now it says should be used, or no, it's shall be used, or something to that effect. And it's going to get changed because it can't say that in their ordinance, but that this will make it so that there is, in fact, I'll read it. I have it right here. Be better than me trying to. Because Ms. Cooper did say she would change it after I pointed it out that it was on here. Additional revenue would provide for a reduction in the borough-wide property tax mill rate by approximately 0.3 to 0.4 mils, which it can't say because it is impossible for this to make that judgment because it's the next assembly that will do that. So I think, and it's a very simple fix, but one word means a lot. That word could be changed to could, which I think is what will happen because this could do that. Anyways, so that, to go on what you're asking, that was the rationale behind some of that, I think, to go forward sooner is to be able to do that next year.
Ms. Hutchings.
Assemblyman Cox, I was wondering if any discussion was had about the fact that right now we are sitting with 2 months out of the second quarter and 2 months out of the third quarter that we have non-prepared food and prepared food, the taxes being different. So if this passed, you would have to do basically 3 tax returns and blend them because of the way the taxes would fall. Some businesses would be burdened.
We did not discuss, because this was only introduction, we did not discuss that this last meeting. If we go further with the discussion, those are the kinds of questions I would like to bring up, especially if the resolution, if the resolution goes through, I think some of those questions will be asked during that time period where there is a working group. If that doesn't come forward, these are definitely some of the questions that I plan to ask, because I agree with you that makes another difficult situation. Because I'm in the landlording business, that also creates a problem with that because we're bound with Alaska Housing and those kinds of groups. We're bound to write 12-month agreements. And on those 12-month agreements, we are not allowed to have varying amounts. It has to be the same amount for that 12-month period. Somebody could say, well, it's still going to be in the city of Soldotna $360 out of a year. But on the technicality, I can't do that if it's only $20 tax in the winter for over 500 and $40 tax in the summer over 500, partially because people break leases all the time. And then legally, am I holding money I shouldn't? Or did I not bring enough? I mean, there's a lot of questions that I have on that. And that's a little bit more personal just because that's the business that I'm in. But I think it's a good scenario to say maybe we need to look at how this will affect our local businesses as well as the residents who are going to be paying the tax. Because remember, this is what the goal of this is, and this came out of the working group for the tourism working group. The tourism working group's job was to look at a bed tax and to look at the idea of, are they paying their fair share? That group decided they were paying their fair share. That group also decided that they didn't like a bed tax. That group also decided that a 2 to 4% seasonal tax was a viable solution. They also decided that doing nothing was a viable solution. And actually, the vote was 3-3, and we had to give them more time because it failed on their final report. The only reason that final report passed is because they added that. Nothing else changed. The only thing that changed was they added the option of no change. So I find that pretty clear with that group that they wanted to see that be part of what we discuss and not just saying that, oh, this is what they put forward, but that we should discuss maybe that there is a no option, no change, we're doing fine type of option. I don't know. Hopefully that answers.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you. And I appreciate always all the information that you provide. I would hope that in the discussion of the seasonal sales tax, which often is framed, we're going to get more from the tourists, that to keep in mind that those of us who live here, who have relatives and guests who come and visit during the summer, that we provide for them means that we will pay more. And so this idea of do anything you can to take more money from tourists actually is going to say those of us who live here will pay more for when our relatives and our guests and friends come here. And so I hope that in balancing, there'll be a fair discussion that yes, it would bring in some more additional revenue from those individuals, but those of us who live here all the time, it's also going to take more from us. And so I just hope that component is also mentioned. And I thank you for all you're doing.
And if I may, I hope so too, because those are the types of questions that I was trying to bring forward. We haven't, but that working group, so there isn't any, this is all we have from the administration only put forward the memo and the ordinance. In the working group, they did have some tables that were put together by the finance department. I will say though, and that's where I had some questions today or last night, was a lot of those were very assumptive. And I'm not saying that the numbers were wrong. The numbers were probably 100% correct. I have no doubt that our finance folks are capable. But depending on how you set that up, it can look a lot different. And so one of the things that was in there is that a lot of the costs were the same in the summer and the winter. And for myself, at least, that's just not true. I can take, for instance, one of my employees took off last weekend because she has a child that does motocross in the summer, so they travel around. They have an RV that they bought for that purpose. Now, I would have to ask, if they don't drive that RV in the winter, but they drive that RV in the summer, are they using more gasoline than they would? To me, that's one of those situations that you're not going to find on a table like that very easily, because everybody's situation is a little bit different. But I think there should be some sort of consensus in our area that we all spend a bit more money in the summer than we do in the winter time.
Go ahead.
Switching gears back to the recreational service areas.
Yes.
I had a very short conversation and honestly not very in depth. So forgive me, with the Soldovia city manager. And one of the topics that we spoke about was the pools and Soldovia possibly taking over the pools. In anticipation for doing that, the tax percentage was increased from 0.75 to 1 mil for that purpose. What I understood from the conversation was that was good because there were, that increase should help them, maintain the pool. But what happens if the schools are fully funded to the cap, that cannot be used to do anything with the pools because the pools are attached to education because they're in the school. So now Soldovia is trying to figure out what they're going to do because they actually can't use the funding. So I'm just curious of those conversations, and I do realize a school district side, but it's also
Yes.
borough side in the funding. So I'm just curious if any of the conversations have been had.
So, and this is just my understanding. My understanding is some of that I believe they're still deciding some of that at the state level. With I don't know if that's been decided yet, because the state school board has been talking about what they're going to do with
Changing
that.
that
Yes.
mechanism.
Well, but not for the better. They're wanting it to be very strict on any monies from anywhere will be counted as part of your going to the cap.
Okay.
Right now, I think there is a way, I think is a way to separate it as of right now, even if it's in the same building. Because that's the only way that the Ninilchik service area can do it. It doesn't matter if it's a city entity or a recreational service area, is if they're funding it separately, what I think would happen is they have it. And then if the school wants to use it, there would be a cost to the school using it.
I see.
So it would be totally separate, even though it's in the building. They would either rent the space or something to that effect would happen. On that note, well, two things. One is Seldovia was our only person that called in yesterday on the resolution. They are very concerned because they do already have a seasonal sales tax. And so it could affect them pretty largely on what happens with that. The second part to that was again with, I know that Seldovia is very closely watching what happens with this Ninilchik one. And I've heard, in our discussions, I heard more than once a statement about how there is a way for cities to get involved and help. And that is one reason, for the city of Soldotna to watch that closely to see if that's something they're not interested in, how they would launch. And I'm not pushing one way or the other. I'm saying that if it comes to that, I'm sure that will be an ask. I mean, just logically.
Thank you.
A follow-up to that, a little bit on the swimming pools. Saying that they're inside the schools, if the service area became a reality, who would be responsible for the maintenance of those pools? Because they're owned by the school district.
Yes. Well, they're owned by the borough. The borough owns those buildings.
So who becomes responsible for them?
As of right now, the way they were setting it up in this service area is that service area would be responsible for it. Now, whether or not they pay, maintenance people from the borough to do it, I don't know how that would work. I just know that it's part of their budget in there. The maintenance is in that service area budget. So financially, it would be the responsibility of that service area. And just as a note, the service area was estimating that it would be 0.6 of a mil. And that equated, on the numbers they were bringing forward, they averaged that out to about $200 a constituent. And I do know that mayor's numbers were 1.2 mils, which was going to be about $400 per constituent additional. So it's not quite as cheap, I think, as some folks are thinking it will be. I don't know if those numbers are a little bit inflated for like reserves and those kinds of things. It very likely is. It might be somewhere in between. And the mayor did mention that number could go down depending on what services they're planning to offer. So probably meaning what hours, because you have lifeguards and all that stuff that you are paying for in that. So it might determine on how often they're open and all of those things.
And those lifeguards and other staff people, would they be employed by the service area or would they be
Yes.
employed by the borough?
No, the borough it would switch totally over to a service area. The only thing I could see possibly happening, especially if we already have people on staff that know how to do some of the work there, is they may contract work or something on the service side of it, on the maintenance. They might contract some of that, possibly back to the borough. I don't know. They wouldn't have to, though. It would be their prerogative to use whoever they wanted to maintenance everything.
And then on the seasonal sales tax, in my mind, that is a cumbersome and burdensome, not only to the business having to collect it and changing it all the time, and the borough staff trying to administer it and keep track of what's going on. In my mind, the easiest and cleanest and the quickest way would be to raise the max tax. That is what's somewhat proposed in there.
So yes, because we discussed that some too, is our finance director said there is a cost to doing the seasonal tax for the borough. There is on that one. There's a lot less cost for changing the max tax, but there will be probably more cost to the businesses on the max tax because it's going to be, the way it's set up right now will be changing so often. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think the software that the borough already has can manage additional max tax. But then the question comes up is, can the businesses, and a big question that come up after that is on any of these is how are our online sales going to manage all of this?
Yeah,
I mean, and this is my personal thing, but I don't know if I've ever not paid all the tax over $500 on Amazon. If I've had something I purchased over $500, I've never had it stop at $500.
The max tax idea for the CPI, I can see where that would be quite difficult to manage. It bite the bullet and just say the max tax is going to go up to X number. And you can figure out what that might be and be able to divide that money up as needed, as either a property tax relief or more to the schools or whatever.
Well, and I think there may be suggestions that come up, because remember, this was all for introduction.
Right.
So I think there may be suggestions that come up with that at our next meeting.
Okay. The other thing is, if any one of these were passed and approved by the voters, when would be the effective date?
I actually think they're all a little different. I don't think any of them are like instant. I think some of them are after I do know the one for the seasonal is April 1. And I think, without looking at it, I think the one that was the max tax was for January 1, I think. And then the other one would just be on our next assessment, which probably would be January. It would be effective January 1 and then added in after January 1.
Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. You might suggest, if these decide to advance further, that instead of particularly the seasonal sales tax, instead of making it April 1st. You need to give time for businesses to adjust. And if you are passing this in October, 6 months isn't going to be enough time for the borough to get their stuff together and for businesses to get together. So you might want to look at delaying the effective date.
I don't disagree for businesses. Our finance director made it very clear that they would be ready.
But
I know. I don't disagree.
and I'm just going to follow up with that a little bit. I think it's more important for the business owners. They have plenty of time. They're the ones that are going to, be the front line of collecting this. And they're the ones that need that extra time, I think. I would believe.
Well, I'm only going to suggest that because it has not been discussed before last night, that is not the concern of the sponsors.
Anything else from the council? Thank you, Mr. Cox.
You're welcome.
We will be waiting here with bated breath to find out what happens. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is public hearings. First one is ordinance 2025-019, approving the fiscal year 2026 capital budget and increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $395,000 in the general fund and $395,000 in the small capital project fund, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact? Ms. Hutchings.
I make a motion to enact ordinance 2025-019, approving the fiscal year 2026 capital budget and increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $395,000 in the general fund and $395,000 in the small capital projects fund.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As stated, this appropriates the funds for the capital budget. And as a reminder, at the last meeting, the council adopted the resolution for the capital, the CIP. And for the funding year 2026, the projects are the storefront improvement grants, library in the amount of 15,000, library improvements in the amount of 70,000, and that is a design phase funding. Outdoor sand storage facility, also it's a supplemental funding for the grant that we have received, a supplemental to go along with the grant that we have received. Shop roof replacement design, also design phase, police building standby generator. Those are the projects that the funding will fund. Everything.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on ordinance 2025-019? Anyone here in the audience? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. Having no one wishing to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes,
Chilson.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes.
Ordinance 2025-019 passes on a 5-0 vote. Moving on to the next agenda item is new business, and that would be Resolution 2025-027, submitting to the qualified voters of the city and of the annexation territory a ballot proposition to annex territory to the city of Soldotna, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to adopt? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I move to enact ordinance resolution 2025-027, submitting to the qualified voters of the city and to the annexation territory a ballot proposition to annex territory to the city of Soldotna.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, the resolution, we worked with the attorney to write the resolution, and I do believe that the attorney, Mr. Casiola, did a great job with the whereas clauses, which captured the history of what has gone on before and what is needed to move forward. As you know, local the local boundary commission has weighed in on a path forward, and the path forward to resolve the annexation petition is to place the matter before the voters. And this resolution does that. And I would say that this action serves to close as the process loop initiated by the city's 2019 petition and LBC's subsequent approval. We did speak with LBC, and at this time, there is not another path that is known. Also, with the full kind of disclosure by LBC, they've never done this before. So we are the first one to move forward in this manner and have a mandate before us that is somewhat, it is unprecedented and really undocumented as far as this mandate, but we've been advised this is the way to close the loop on the process. So as far as the voters, it would be the voters inside the city limits and also voters inside the proposed annexation areas. And the clerk's office is taking care of all of that to move that forward, and we'll work also with the borough clerk, but taking care of all of that to move that forward to the not as much concern, of course, about the city voters, but to clearly identify the voters in the proposed annexation area. I did have a request from a council member regarding wanting maps for the area. I sent an email, and as soon as I have them, I will send them out to all of you so that you have the maps as well.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on Resolution 2025-027? Seeing no one here in the audience, we'll move on to the Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. Having no one who wishes to speak on the item is back before the council, are there any council comments? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you. A question for either the city manager or the city clerk. Can you talk more about the voters within the territory areas and the people that reside? Will it only be people who are registered voters that are within that territory? Business owners are not eligible to vote if they have businesses within the area?
Mr. Mayor, you defer to the city clerk.
That's right.
Deferring to the city clerk.
Vice Mayor Parker through the mayor. So voters residing within the city limits will get to vote on it, and voters residing outside the city limits, but within the proposed annexation area. And it is voters that are registered to vote at a residence within those areas.
In other words, you have to be a registered voter living in that territory. So what happens if there is a territory that has no registered voters or residents in that area?
So at this time, we've identified 136 registered voters within all of the territories. If there's an area that doesn't have a registered voter in it, then it's a mass. So it's inside and outside. So we could have, let's say we had 10 outside and it passed inside the city, it would just need to get 6 outside the city. It doesn't matter what areas they come from. So it's just outside. Does that make sense? So there can be areas that have no voters. It's a total of the combined areas where it has to pass. Or
In other words, not each.
right,
not-
correct.
not-
Not individual territories, correct.
And Vice Mayor Parker, I thought you had a follow-up.
I did, but the city clerk answered it.
Question?
Mr. Carey.
Madam Clerk, did I hear you say 137 have been identified? 136?
136, that was way early on when we first started talking about this, and we will give people an opportunity to understand, like, they have to be registered to vote in this election at the location within those areas by September 7th, so 30 days prior to the election. And we will also be sending postcards to each individual that we can identify, letting them know that they will have an opportunity to vote on this question on or before October 7th.
Excellent. That's specifically what I wanted to ask, could we do that? And I'm hearing you say, yes, not only we could, but we shall.
Yes, and I've actually prepared a white paper based on the process I see going forward for this. And I'm happy to email that out to the council and get any additional questions or feedback.
Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments from the Vice Mayor Parker?
Just a comment. This has been definitely a long process, this annexation process. And I'm glad to see that we are going to be finally closing this, and what the outcome is, don't know, but it will be putting the issue to bed finally. So thanks to the administration for getting this all in order for us.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes,
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes.
Resolution 2025-027 passes on a 5-0 vote. Moving on, mayor and council reports, mayor's reports and proclamations. I was in Kansas City last week and talking about sales tax and different taxes. The one bill I looked at, invoice from the hotel, I believe there was 10 separate taxes, lines. I mean, there was a line for any kind of tax that you could ever think of. Sales tax, public safety tax, auditorium tax, railroad tax, you name it, it was on that. So it's something everybody has. That's the only thing I'm going to comment on tonight. Next one is council reports on boards and commissions, July 2nd, 2025, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting by Ms. Wackler, and she is not here, so I guess we will not have a report unless somebody else has one. Or okay, move on to the next item on the agenda is public comments. Oh, excuse me, city manager's report. That's the second time in a row that I've skipped over you.
So I kind of think like I will just not say anything this evening.
Yeah.
Actually, I do not have a report this evening. Thank you.
Any questions for the city manager? Seeing none, next item, public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item? Anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on any item? Seeing none, we'll take a look at the Zoom and see if there's any hands raised there, and there are no hands raised. Next item is council comments. Ms. Hutchings,
No comment.
Mr. Carey,
no comment.
Vice Mayor Parker,
No comment?
Mr. Nelson,
No comments tonight.
and last but not least, Mr. Chilson.
No comments.
Next item, executive session, a discussion regarding ongoing Public Safety Employees Association union negotiations. In accordance with Alaska Statute 44.62.310 C1 and C3, the City Council may convene into an executive session to discuss matters the immediate knowledge of which would clearly have an adverse effect upon the finances of the city, as well as matters which by law, municipal charter, or ordinances are required to be confidential. May I have a motion to enter into executive session? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I move to enter into an executive session to discuss ongoing Public Safety Employee Association union negotiations. The executive session will include the mayor, council members, and city manager Bauer.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any objections to convening into executive session? Seeing and hearing none, we will move into executive session. And once the council returns from executive session, the Zoom meeting will be resumed.